The governor of Rivers State, Sim Fubara, and state lawmakers have been advised to sheath their sword and concentrate on governance, as the current political crisis triggered by an impeachment notice may lead to the imposition of another state of emergency to the detriment of the citizens. Residents of the state who spoke with Arise News are also urging the governing All Progressives Congress in the state to call both actors to order. Uduak Patrick filed in this report.
24 hours after the Rivers State House of Assembly initiated a fresh attempt to impeach Governor Sim Fubara, residents of the state have warned both arms of government to stay action and refocus on governance to prevent the imposition of a state of emergency by federal authorities. The development marks the third attempt to impeach Governor Fubara, with the first attempt earlier made on Monday, October 30, 2023, and the second attempt made on Monday, March 17, 2025. But Speaker Martin Amewule insists the Assembly is right to embark on a fresh impeachment move, as Governor Fubara has been spending public money without budgetary approvals.
Rather than caution the governor for his infractions on the Constitution, they are clapping for him. Rather than calling on the governor, they are calling on our FCT minister, who is helping Mr. President in Abuja, and making it look like it's a problem between the FCT minister and the governor. It is not FCT minister and the governor. It is the governor and the Constitution. The governor is a threat to our democracy. It is better we all resign and leave the governor and those he wants to use to defraud Rivers people. We cannot continue to allow this to happen.
Some political actors tell Arise News that President Bola Ahmed Tinubu's constant interventions may have led to the failed attempt in the past.
And I'm confident in my heart that Mr. President definitely will never take this for granted. I will never allow such a thing to happen as long as Nigeria is concerned and as long as APC is concerned in Rivers State.
Our state needs peace at the moment, and what they have done now is not in the interest of Rivers people. If not for anything, at certain time you make consultation with your constituents. And to them, what has the constituents said? Because you must consult your constituents before taking such decisions as this. Because impeachment does not start and end with them.
Remember, as assembly members, we have given them mandate to represent us there. And to represent us means to checkmate the executive.
But the APC in the state also remains divided between Tony Okocha, who is recognized by the National Working Committee, and Emeka Beke, who still claims to be the genuine Rivers APC chairman, who was validly elected as a state congress and not imposed. While the APC faction in Rivers, led by Emeka Beke, has asked the State House of Assembly to resist moves to destabilize the Fubara-led government, Tony Okocha, who is an ally of the FCT minister Nyesom Wike, has however remained mum and refused to comment on the matter despite an Arise News inquiry on his views on the matter. This development has further divided Rivers residents who thought it was previously an internal issue within the former ruling People's Democratic Party, from which both actors defected to the APC. Governor Fubara had, while receiving the APC membership card at the Rivers State Government House from Okocha, said his decision to join the APC is aimed at aligning with the ruling party at the federal level to ensure political stability, commending President Bola Tinubu for supporting his administration. But with the recent outburst between the APC National Secretary Ajibola Basiru and Nyesom Wike, many political observers say the APC now seems to have a Wike problem, just like the PDP, and are calling for a swift dialogue to address the contentious issues that a likely impeachment of Governor Sim Fubara may throw up in the polity at the state and national levels.
Well, quite a lot said there, but joining us now to share his thoughts on all of that, as well as the Nigerian Tax Administration Act 2025, is lawyer and public policy analyst, Liborous Oshoma. Good morning, Liborous, and Happy New Year to you. Good to have you on the morning show today.
Yeah, good morning, Steve and Awa, and Happy New Year.
Thank you very much. Good morning. All right, let's talk about Rivers State. Rivers of trouble, some people will say, or 1 week, one trouble, as far as Rivers State is concerned. The trouble is back somehow, and there are two key dimensions to it. There's a political dimension of the trouble between the governor, Sim Fubara, and his godfather, the minister, Sim Wike. But of course, the other trouble with the House of Assembly, where the Speaker, Amaule, in initiating, what is it called? A removal of the president, an impeachment of the governor, impeachment of the governor, is saying clearly that Governor Fubara is a threat to democracy. Very, very tough words there being used. What is your reading, Liborous, of all that is happening in Rivers State at this point? What do you think triggered it, and how far do you think that the Rivers State House of Assembly can go this time around, given the fact that it was the same rhetoric that led ultimately to the state of emergency that kept Fubara away for 6 months last year?
Yeah, thank you once again, and Happy New Year to our viewers. When I heard that word, Fubara is a threat to democracy, and I asked myself the question, are they not all threats to democracy? Is this how democracy is run, really, if we're talking about democracy? Starting from the election, for a man to boast that he bought forms for all the members of the House of Assembly, including the governor, and senators and House of Rep, and nobody's asking him where are his tax returns and what are his earnings, where did the money come from? Is that not a threat to democracy? For a man who is a minister of the FCT to sit down, rather than sit down in Abuja, is in Rivers State, going around as if campaigns has started and shouting agreement, disagreement, I will not support the governor, and what the Gen Z will call cho-cho-cho. Is that not a threat to democracy? As if he's the only voter in Rivers State. And then after all of that is said, the next thing, the House of Assembly pretending to enforce the Constitution now comes around to say, yes, there's a threat to democracy. We suddenly woke up and we want to enforce these provisions of Section 188 of the Constitution. Are these not threats to democracy, where party members, rather than involve internal party mechanism for resolving dispute, would all look towards the president to resolve, and yet you say you don't want to create superhuman? Is that not threat to democracy? So when I look at these people masquerading as Democrat and bandying the Constitution, I just laugh, because in the first place, we all know during the emergency rule that you said that we all are aware of, I choose to call it an interregnum for the Rivers people. We all know that a budget was passed at the National Assembly. That budget, according to, initially I had thought, because the Supreme Court had ruled that misconduct is as defined by the members of the House of Assembly. So what they term as misconduct is what misconduct is. So I had thought that the governor was actually spending extra budgetary expenses without recourse to the House of Assembly, until I listened to the spokesperson of the House of Assembly saying that when the governor came back after the state of emergency, they knew that there was a budget in operation, but that they felt that that budget did not cover the plans and program of the governor. So they have asked him to submit another budget, and the governor had bluntly refused to submit another budget. The question a reasonable man would ask is, what if the governor decides to run that budget to a logical conclusion, to its end, before submission of another budget? Must you now define what the governor's plans and programs are for the governor? Or are you in a position to tell him what he should do or how he should implement a budget that had been passed, duly passed, when you were away? Or also, are you surreptitiously asking the governor to bring a budget so that you can also add your interest to that budget? And failure to add your interest to the budget is what is leading to all of this. These are the questions that they are not ready to ask.
Right.
And sorry, lastly, and they keep, I don't know what they call the rest of us, telling us that it has nothing to do with the FCT minister who is helping Mr. President in Abuja. Is that how to help Mr. President? We've seen the FCT minister all over the internet as if he's campaigning, going everywhere, holding rallies. Is that help of Mr. President also? And then the next move was an impeachment notice. I don't know what these people call us sometimes, but we'll look at the process of impeachment, because you have asked how long this would take and how long it will go. There are procedures, and for a long time now, most of the impeachments that had been impeachment, no matter how well crafted, that we had seen in recent time, including that of the Edo State Deputy Governor and that of Kogi State Deputy Governor, the Supreme Court had nullified them, because you remember that ouster of the jurisdiction of the court in subsection 10 of section 180 had been what they were previously using to carry out kangaroo processes of impeachment. But the court had said, well, without compliance with subsection 1 to 9, strict compliance, certainly the court will invoke subsection 10. And in invoking subsection 10, the court had nullified all of those previous impeachment that had been held. So we'll maybe with time, we'll go through the process step by step.
Yes, I actually want to borrow your legal mind to ask a couple of questions concerning this impeachment notice. First of all, the 7-day statutory window that's been given for response. What's the immediate legal checkmate, so to speak, that Governor Fubara can make to stall the process, seeing as it has the 7-day window? And also, I'm aware that there's an error on the impeachment notice in terms of how Fubara is addressed. He's referred to as Madam. Don't know if that's supposed to be some kind of shade or if it was a clerical error. But could this be a reason to nullify the legal validity of the service? And also, Minister Wike alleged that Fubara reneged on the 2025 June peace deal that was brokered by the president and himself. Legally speaking, can a breach of a political agreement ever serve as a foundation for gross misconduct under Section 188 of the Constitution? So those legal questions for you. What do you think, Liborous?
Yeah, first and foremost, the impeachment notice must be served personally on the governor. That's 7 days window. There is no legal impediment because that action, the court cannot, in all honesty, there is no legal provision to empower the court to stop an act, because that would mean the court interfering with the functions and duties of the legislature, one arm of government interfering with the functions of another arm of government. So there is no provision in the law that empowers the court to stop that notice. If it's addressed as, what do you call it, madam, it might be a clerical error or a shade, but maybe at the end of the day, that also might be a ground for challenge. But the notice must certainly be served personally, even though it is not spelled out in the Constitution, but with the protectorate of authorities, when originating documents or processes like this, it is insisted that the court had insisted that they must serve personally. And then after that, he has about a 14 days window within which to respond. Whether he responds or not, the House of Assembly can decide to go ahead to take a vote on whether the matter should be investigated or not. And then on the other question, I really didn't get that other part of the question on I'm trying to remember now.
It's the breach of a political agreement. Wike is alleging that Fubara reneged on the
so the political agreement. Yeah, if you remember, what even led, first and foremost, what led to the state declaration of a state of emergency was a breach of that same agreement. You remember when they went to the president's, when they visited the president, an agreement was reached and signed, and it was authenticated by the president and as an executive order. So when the governor got back to Port Harcourt, his associates and advisors told him that an executive order cannot, the president cannot, by executive order, direct the governor. And so that led to the breakdown of that agreement. And you hear Wike shouting agreement, disagreement, agreement, disagreement. But because the Supreme Court had heard that the House of Assembly, it is what the House of Assembly terms as misconduct. That is misconduct. There's no definition for misconduct in that regard in the Constitution. But I doubt if you stretch that interpretation, depending on what an agreement or that agreement is, because, for example, the law cannot enforce an illegal agreement. If that agreement requests the governor to co-join or co-assent to the budget with Wike, who is not a governor of the state, that agreement is clearly illegal. It's I think it's a gentleman agreement, and to a large extent also, I think some provisions of that agreement had also been executed. If you look at the political structure of Rivers State, like your reporter said, the Wike's faction of the APC is the one that is recognized by the National Working Committee. The local government chairman, local government election conducted, almost all of them are loyal to Wike. The House of Assembly members, almost all of them are loyal to Wike. The appointments so far from the Rivers State are, you can say they are loyalists of Wike. If even without seeing that agreement, you can say that certainly that almost the entire structure, both in APC and PDP, the APC structure now in Rivers State, the president surreptitiously had handed it over to, the Wike. So the only thing remaining now is for the governor. I think if allowing the governor also to do what he needs to do, and also have allowances within that agreement shouldn't be outside the scope of the agreement. And then, like I said earlier, on stretching it, I do not think a breach of that agreement, to answer your question directly, should form a basis for misconduct and impeachment. If it's an agreement reached, a gentleman agreement reached, then it can subsequently be renegotiated by the arbiter and then amends made. So, but to now use constitutional provisions to now use that agreement and infuse it into a constitutional provision dressed in the agreement form, or a constitutional form to say it's a breach of the Constitution. While the House of Assembly is singing breach of the Constitution, their leader or their godfather, if you permit me to use that word, is singing agreement is agreement, agreement is agreement. So which one should we follow? Is it a breach of the Constitution or a breach of the agreement? And we all know, since the breach of the agreement preceded the alleged breach of Constitution, certainly it's all about a breach of an agreement reached. And I do not think that breach of agreement should form a basis for impeachment, because it can always be renegotiated.
All right. A couple of questions from me. How long do you think that Fubara can last if the State House of Assembly, which it does not control, Wike controls the Assembly, it is obvious to everybody, how long do you think that it can last in terms of the processes and procedure of an impeachment? A few weeks, a couple of months, and then what role will the Chief Justice of the Rivers State have in all this ultimately? Because ideally, it won't end with any proclamation from the State House of Assembly. And then you can add this to it. Fubara is APC.
Yeah.
His party is saying, we stand with our governor. What do you think that his party should be doing at this point in time?
Yeah, you see, I had always said that impeachment proper rise and fall with the chief judge of any state. The House of Assembly can initiate the process. You can do, all the debate, all the abracadabra. Once the chief judge decides to constitute a panel of 7 of people that will return a verdict of no misconduct established, that's by virtue of subsection 9 of section 188, that is the end of that process. A debate will not be taken on it, not even a discussion on the matter. So if we had seen that in most times before now, when the House of Assembly wants to do this, they have the buy-in of the chief judge, who will constitute a panel of, even though the Constitution says a panel of people with integrity who are not partisan, who are not members of the civil service, and all of that. We've seen situations where members of the panel, I've even had a colleague who was once a member of a panel who even said that the report was already written even before the sat. That's to tell you how kangaroonish these processes can take. But if you have a chief judge who decides to say, you know what, we're going to do the right thing, we're going to bring in people who will look at this matter dispassionately. And the words on the street of Rivers State really is that a lot of them, apart from those people who are loyal to their leader, the words on the street is a lot of people are not happy with what is happening. So if the chief judge decides, because their panel has a window of 1 month within which, 30 days within which to submit a report. So if the chief judge decides to set up a panel of men of integrity who will look at the issues dispassionately, and they come up with a return of no misconduct has been established, certainly that becomes the end of the matter. But if, like we have seen happening everywhere in Rivers, where Wike seems to have his hands on the lever, the political lever, if he also has his hand on the legal judiciary, then certainly, like we've seen in previous processes, then we can say that Fubara is as well as gone. But that's not clear now, because a lot of people cannot say for sure. This is where the chief judge political leaning, because whether we like it or not, even though the judiciary is supposed to be unbiased, we've seen complaints from actors and non-actors politically complain about judgment coming from courts, and so that's where some persons loyal to Fubara are hinging their hope now that certainly the chief judge might come to their rescue. And if he does that, then that becomes the end of the matter, because the next sitting of the House of Assembly would be for them to take a vote on whether the matter should be investigated. And once that is done, the Speaker would now write to the Chief Judge to constitute a panel of 7 persons, unbiased 7 persons with integrity, to investigate the matter, and they have 30 days within which to report their findings. And then now to the other question on
APC.
Your last question again, please remind me.
APC is political party.
Yes. So, Steve, do you know when this issue started playing out? First it was in PDP and now in APC.
Yes.
The question that comes to mind, if you remember, the first governor that was impeached in Nigeria, Balarabe Musa of the PROP, who had a house, dominated by the MPN. So you begin to wonder, yes, PROP governor had a house dominated by MPN, who even refused to screen his commissioners. But today, you have a party, before they were all in PDP, some said they defected, that the issue of defection or no defection came in. And you remember we had this debate back and forth that it is not within the ambit of, within the powers of the governor to say who he will recognize and who he will not recognize, that it is the court that will spell out defection and will state how defection should be, who has defected or who didn't defect. We argued all of that until the court eventually ruled that it is not within the governor's bureau, like according to him, to recognize who is a member of the House and who is not a member of the House. But today, they are all in the same party now, APC. I think the House of Assembly members did not expect that Fubara was going to follow them into APC. I would have expected that the party at the center would rein in their members or called a roundtable discussion to review that agreement, to look at the agreement, the document, and then maybe propose a way forward. But typical of our democracy, like I said earlier, where everybody looks up to the man at the top, where like they say, Oga at the top, the Mr. President. So he's not around now, everybody's looking up to him, hoping that he, as the leader of the party, he will be the one, once again, to call them to order. Wike is not a member of their party, and it is laughable that you have APC dominated House of Assembly this time, you have a governor who is a member of the APC, and then that same APC House is proposing to impeach a member of their party in favor of a non-member of the party. That's laughable. And I do not see how APC, if they allow this to go through, I do not see how they would, explain this, including Mr. President, to Nigerians. It's clear that truly the party, the center can no longer hold, just like it was in PDP those days as a ruling party. You have a ruling party syndrome when you have contending interests, even though they are all members of the same party, but they all have different blocks and contending interests. So it was like opposition within the party. And that clearly is not democracy. And that clearly shows that there is no political ideology in the party. So that's where we would expect, because Wike is not a member of the party. He does not listen to anybody in the party, apart from Mr. President. That's why even when the National Secretary of the party had said that they stand with Fubara, they support him, immediately the response from Wike was that he should not even interfere in the affairs of Rivers State. Right. And that he has brought both the APC chairman, state chairman, and the PDP state chairman together, and anybody that can try it in the state should go and do it. So it's like a bull in the China shops, and Mr. President, who appointed him, that can call him to order.
Bull in a China shop, indeed. We're going to pivot here and talk about some of these, this new tax law that, of course, is the other topic of discussion this 10th day into the new year. Of course, we were also discussing the PwC report, the poverty index, saying that it may hit 140 million people this year, despite these reforms that have been given to us by this administration. In your professional opinion, do you see these new tax laws as a tool for economic improvement, economic recovery, or is it something of a final squeeze for the poor man and a population already that's at a breaking point?
First and foremost, tax, it's like a trust thing. When the government, if you want people to voluntarily pay taxes, government must enhance transparency that will build trust. That's where the deficiency is. You see, in an economy where the president had consistently said that he feels the pain, he feels the suffering of the masses, subsidies, there are no subsidies. The only mono product that drives the economy, subsidies, has been removed. You can say despite since the removal of subsidy, the prices, are going down. But just imagine a situation where people were buying a product at 200 and something naira, and then it leaps to 1,000 plus, and then it's gradually coming down to 700 and something. It's still high for the average man. And then you look at the price of electricity, it is also, not even those people in band A, they still have epileptic supply sometimes, and in most cases, they are still having to pay more, that rate, that band A rate, despite not having consistent power supply. This also affects the prices of goods and services. And in all of this, you still see the government living as if we're an economic boom, despite the economic doom. So, what one would have expected was the government to cut costs and actually feel the pain of the everyday person. We still see contract awarded and then jobs not effectively carried out. We still see governors driving a retinue of cars and retinue of aides who do not have desk anywhere. So with this kind of deficiency, as fantastic as the tax administration law is, the tax law is, and trying to update our tax laws to be in tandem with best practices. The first question is our governance and our political government in tandem with best practice? So in the absence of that, you're going to tax the big companies for the benefit of the poor companies, and then you say if your income is less than 800,000 per annum, take a minimum wage of the 70,000 minimum wage. By the time you tabulate it, you find out that there is absolutely nobody in Nigeria whose income is less than 800,000 naira per annum. We're talking about 12 months. If you are spending 800,000 naira for 12 months in Nigeria, certainly to be difficult for you to move. Your mobility is highly inhibited. Take a study of transportation in December, for example, from Iyanokpaja to Victoria Island. You know the way Lagos is. And those traveling from Lagos to the east, the west, and the north for holiday, I had to pay about 45,000 naira from Lagos to Auchi just to deliver a bag to somebody. So when you put all of this together, all of these fine lines and fantastic wording of, oh yes, it is to tax the rich to enhance the poor, really it's just a way of hoodwinking or trying to calm the poor people who have consistently not benefited from, government largesse, if you want to call it that way. When you see somebody who was hitherto very poor, had nothing, becomes a councillor, and then the next thing he drives SUVs. The government, the local government that is supposed to be the government that is closest to the people, despite the reforms, despite the autonomy granted to the local government, we still see that they are almost non-functional. So in all of this, I think government should do more in terms of transparency, in terms of enhancing the governance structure in Nigeria by providing more of these amenities. I take our mind back to when Fashola was governor in Lagos State. You saw people voluntarily going to pay taxes because they saw roads being constructed. They saw, no matter how small we say, they saw reforms. But in an era where nobody is saying anything, the roads are deplorable despite the fact that we're constructing new ones, and the prices of goods and services are skyrocketing. Your take-home pay can hardly take you home, whether you're in private or public sector. Corruption index is on the high, that EFCC does not even know where to start. Then we're still saying, look, we want to tax everybody. It is good to tax, no doubt. Nigerians ordinarily are not used to it, but also because Nigerians have never really benefited from good governance.
Absolutely, Liborous. I get your point about who really will benefit from if you earn less than 800,000 that the tax law is talking about. At 70,000 naira a month, which is the standard minimum wage for federal workers, it's 840,000 naira per annum. So you are qualified to pay tax. At 85,000, as Lagos State and Rivers State, I believe, and a few other states are paying, it's 1,020,000 naira. And therefore, where are the workers that Taiwo Idele and co are saying that, they will not be taxed if they earn less than 800? Because the law says that you shouldn't pay them less than the minimum wage anyway. But of course, we get your point, Liborous. And, these are interesting times. And we hope that Nigeria and Nigerians will survive. So we want to thank you for joining us on the Morning Show today. Liborous Oshoma.